Quite a few championship deciders in F1 have been in Abu Dhabi. Let's not talk about the one in 2021, because that one still triggers a lot of people. And this video is meant to be for fun. Last season was also decided in the last race in Abu Dhabi. Lando Norris needed to finish on the podium, and that was enough for the title. Well, we had a similar situation in the race this video is about. Nico Roseberg needed to follow Lewis Hamilton to the podium, and then the German would win the title. Lewis Hamilton did everything he could to prevent this, and it made this race pretty memorable. This funny race review is about Abu Dhabi 2016, the duel in the desert. Roll intro. That final race in Abu Dhabi had a few details that I wanted to share here. For instance, there were 11 teams and 22 drivers on the grid. Now, 10 years later, we're going back to those numbers. Manor Racing was the 11th team, and it was the last season they competed. Pascal Wehrlein and a very young Esteban Ocon drove for the team in blue. It was also the last race for 2009 World Champion Button and 2008 World Champion Massa. Well, no. The court has ruled that this result won't be changed, but he might still get some cash. Mercedes had this almighty hybrid engine advantage. Their drivers were Rosberg and Hamilton, who were fighting the infamous Silver War. Ferrari had 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel and 1-time world champion Kimi Räikkönen as their drivers. And Red Bull had Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen as teammates for the very first season. We had Force India on the grid, which would later become Aston Martin. Sergio Perez and Nico Hülkenberg were their drivers. And they are still on the grid. It seems like the more things change, the more things stay the same. Rosberg had 367 points, while Hamilton trailed him by 12 points at 355 points. So Hamilton needed to win, and Rosberg needed at least a P3. Enough ingredients for an interesting race, I'd say. Nothing much happened between the championship contenders at the start. They all got away okay. However, Max Verstappen had a spin after contact with his buddy Nico Hülkenberg. So it looks like Max won't have any part in this race, right? Well, you never know with Verstappen. At this point he's in P18. Not ideal. He has a lot of work to do. Which started with a typical Max overtake on Romain Grosjean in his Haas. A few laps later, Max overtook Kvyat, whose seat he took earlier in the season. I'll not joke about Kelly this time. I've done that too many times before. At lap 8, the pit stops already started, because the whole tire thing was weird those days. I think there were 8 different colors and names. I don't have the energy to look up all that stuff again. Rosberg pitted, but he had to wait for a Ferrari coming through. The team played it safe to prevent a penalty. Verstappen was going long on a super duper soft shit tires, or whatever the f you call them, so he was in front of Rosberg. Nico was told to get past Max as soon as possible. And a nice fight went on, but Max stayed in front. Also because Rosberg didn't want to risk anything. This was Max in his second season, by the way. Lewis Hamilton at this stage could have set off and could have left them all behind. But at this stage he was already pacing himself for what he was about to do later. Here's a shot of a certain McLaren CEO at the first race in the job. Yes, it's Zak Brown, who's a quiet observer of what's going on track. If only he could have stayed that way. The next thing he sees is one of his cars retiring. Jenson Button ends his F1 career with a DNF, but he wasn't too caught up about it. Little did he know that years later he would be forced to work with Danica Patrick. I suppose sometimes it's better not to know too much. Ignorance is bliss. In the meantime, Max was keeping his tires alive, and it's clear that he's going for a one-stop strategy. Then a DNF for Daniel, who only scored 4 points in his Toro Rosso that season. Again, Rosberg gets instructions to get past Verstappen without taking any risks. Another great fight follows. This time, Rosberg is finally rid of that pesky kid. I wonder if Lewis ever thanked Max for helping him in his effort to snatch the title away. I doubt it actually. So when Verstappen gets pitted and he loses a few positions, he immediately starts making up positions by overtaking his future teammate Checo. A whole gaggle of cars pit, including Rosberg, who comes out in front of Verstappen. I bet he was happy with that. Hamilton gets told to speed up again, or he'll lose to Vettel, who was also doing a one-stop strategy. What follows is another 15 laps where nothing happens. Abu Dhabi can be a very dull race, regardless of the title being fought or not. I had to sit through it because F1 hasn't released a 30-minute race highlights video. There was a little crash between Renault driver Palmer from F1 TV and Carlos Sainz. Palmer retired and later lost his seat to Carlos. Ha! Spanish karma again. When Hamilton is urged to pick up the pace again, Vettel overtakes Ricciardo. Hamilton is instructed to go faster. He says, just let us race. A bit like Mati always likes drivers to race. Commentator Crofty then says, all is fair in love and war. Which I agree with. It's just a pity they always pick and choose who to choose that energy for. Vettel needed about 3 laps to get past Verstappen, and Rosberg is getting a little desperate and wants the team to do something about Hamilton backing him up. Hamilton decides to go even slower and says to Paddy Lowe on the radio that he's losing this championship, so he's comfortable with his pace. Here's a shot of Esteban Ocon being a dick to his teammate. He has a 10-year history of doing this. This proves it. Vettel manages to get one attack on Rosberg, while Hamilton says that he doesn't care about losing the race because he's losing the championship. This is the order they finish in, and even if Vettel had passed Rosberg, Verstappen wasn't quick enough to get Rosberg. So Hamilton's shenanigans were futile. But it made the race way more interesting. Nico Roseberg wins the title after leading the championship for 16 rounds. So I'd say he's the deserved winner of the 2016 season. He's also the second son of a world champion to win the title. His father Keke won the title in 1982. The first father and son champions were Graham and Damon Hill. Nico Rosberg partied hard and then 5 days later he retired. Max Verstappen had the opportunity to do something like Hamilton did in 2016 in the 2025 final. In fact, if he had backed Piastri up and Leclerc had passed Norris, Verstappen would have been the champion. Lando Norris was in P3 after he overtook a bunch of drivers, including Yuki Tsunoda, who pushed him wide, and then Norris went off track. No further action. So why didn't Max Verstappen try any shenanigans to make it more difficult? Well, first of all, McLaren would have swapped Piastri and Norris, so the title would still go to the McLaren driver. I think Verstappen knew it was futile, just like in 2016. I also firmly believe that Max, with 4 titles in his possession, chose not to play any games and cause more controversy. 2021 is always fresh in people's minds. I don't think he was too upset that his buddy Lando won the title. I say buddy because I think in a few years Max and Lando will patch things up again. Max said it's hard to keep those close friendships when you're competing. So this could change when they don't compete anymore. Anyway, I hope you liked this funny race review. If you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. Take care now. Doei doei. Kvyat, kvyat, kvyat.